When doing the last video, I talked about Star Wars fandom quite a bit. And this got me thinking, wow, I should do a video on Star Wars fandom. But where do I start? The sequels, the prequels, the originals? Do I address toxicity or the disillusionment of longtime fans with the Disney Star Wars films? I'll get to all of that, but I decided I would start at the beginning, with the events leading up to and including the 1977 opening of Star Wars. I chose this because it seems right, and I'd like to cover many aspects of Star Wars fandom, a lot of which I haven't even listed yet. But the original, or A New Hope, if you will, seems like the best way to dive into this subject. I may be a casual comic fan, but I have been a Star Wars fan for as long as I can remember. I've seen all the Star Wars films on opening weekend, except for one, the first one, A New Hope. It was released in May of 1977, and I was born the next month in June. But my mom saw the movie in the theater, and she was 8 months pregnant with yours truly. I'd like to say that I was born into Star Wars fandom. From the womb to the tomb. I really didn't have a choice in the matter. I heard Vader's voice while I was in my mom's belly, and I was hooked from then on. Also, Star Wars was very big in my family growing up, but I'll get into that in a later video. Just bear with me on this one. I will probably bring up a whole bunch of stuff that doesn't seem like it's Star Wars related, but trust me, it is. This is like a building. We're doing this brick by brick, my friends. As a species, we have always had some sort of myth. This was true of the ancient Greeks with the stories of Zeus triumphing over his father, the evil Titan Kronos, tales of heroes like Perseus and Hercules, both demigods who accomplished great deeds in the face of overwhelming odds. We created embodiments of fear and evil and the corruption of the soul with characters like King Minos and Loki. I'm talking Norse mythology Loki, not Marvel. He's cool too. I like him. Myths help humanity make sense of its surroundings. Here's a quote from the PBS website about myths and heroes. But myths are more than mere stories, and they serve a more profound purpose in ancient and modern cultures. Myths are sacred tales that explain the world and man's experience. Myths are as relevant to us today as they were to the ancients. Myths answer timeless questions and serve as a compass for each generation. End quote. As myths are a compass for each generation, it makes sense that mythology would be translated into popular mediums of the period. Spoken stories would give way to written stories and books. Eventually, radio tales and comic books, and of course, the silver screen. Some examples of ancient myth-based movies are Jason and the Argonauts, Ben-Hur, and Spartacus. A young George Lucas seemed to know the power and influence of mythology, and took many inspirations from them to help shape his vision of Star Wars. Lucas drew inspiration from Arthurian legend, along with the classical Tao, Shinto, and Confucianism. The Jedi was a combination of the chivalrous knights of the European feudal society and a Buddhist warrior monk during the Kamakura period of Japan. George Lucas was especially fond of the work of author Joseph Campbell and his book, A Hero with a Thousand Faces. In the book, Campbell explores the theory that mythological narratives frequently share a fundamental structure. Campbell refers to it as the monomyth, and he outlines the hero's journey as, quote, a hero ventures forth from the world of common day into a region of supernatural wonder. Fabulous forces there encountered and a decisive victory is won. The hero comes back from this mysterious adventure with the power to bestow boons on his fellow man. Lucas combined the concept of Campbell with the pulp and comic heroes of his youth, like Buck Rogers and Flash Gordon. George also put his story in the setting of another galaxy and a long time ago. This was pretty brilliant in my opinion. This put Star Wars out of the realm of sci-fi and into the realm of space fantasy. Also, the Star Wars universe could have a real sense of history to it as well. This new mythology starts to take shape.
They revived a whole generation's hatreds that should have been left frozen.
70s cinema is also referred to as New Hollywood. This is an age when movies had completely moved away from the old studio system and focused on grittier subject matters, or stylistically characterized similar to a more avant-garde expressionistic experience. Movies like The Godfather, Bonnie and Clyde, The Graduate, and Easy Rider came from this era. But in 1975, something changed Hollywood forever. Y'all thought I was talking about Star Wars, didn't ya? Don't worry, we'll get there soon. In 1975, the movie Jaws came out and became the first bona fide Hollywood blockbuster. Just an FYI, the director Steven Spielberg is good friends with Star Wars creator George Lucas. You see, Jaws set a precedent for the film industry. It quickly blew past box office pictures like The Godfather and The Exorcist. Ultimately, the movie would gross over $260 million alone in the US. Now that number is still a pretty decent amount by today's standards, but adjusting for inflation, $260 million would equal $1,319,345,353.16 in today's economy. So you can see why people made such a big deal out of this movie. Of course, 2 years later, that record would be smashed by Spielberg's buddy, Mr. Lucas, with a weird low-budget space opera named Star Wars. In May of 1977 it happened, and the American public wasn't ready for it. For the cost of $11 million, this movie made over $460 million. That would be the equivalent of $2,076 million and really some change. I don't want to go into all the numbers again. Now mind you, that's just domestically. The final tally with the international box office was $775 million with more change. Now, what the numbers don't tell you is the cultural effect that Star Wars had on the United States in 1977. Mind you, back then, prior to the movie, no one knew what a lightsaber was or knew the shape of the Millennium Falcon by heart. We didn't have heroes like Luke Skywalker, Princess Leia, Organa, Ben Kenobi, or the Rogue with the heart of gold that you can't take your eyes off of. Of course, I'm talking about Porkins now. Just kidding. Y'all know I'm talking about Han Solo. Quickly after the movie came out, it's pretty safe to say the nation had Star Wars fever. Everything from Star Wars t-shirts, Star Wars licensed toys. There was even a disco version of the Star Wars theme that was originally written by the legendary John Williams. Now, of course, I'm talking about the Star Wars score, not the disco version. Now, what was the difference between Star Wars and other movies of the time like Taxi Driver? I would say it's because a lot of 70s cinema shined a light on the gritty side of America during a period of time where the nation was already so pessimistic, where Star Wars was a form of awesome escapism. You could leave the dirty streets of New York City or the idyllic but boring suburbs and be transported to a galaxy far, far away. So let's ask the question, what exactly did it mean to be a Star Wars fan in the late 70s and into the early 80s? We're not just talking about Gen X. We're also talking about baby boomers. Keep in mind, there was no Facebook, smartphones, cable television for the most part, definitely no broadband internet. Household computers were still an oddity. So how did fans express their fandom with these very limited options? With good old-fashioned fan clubs by mail. And we're talking traditional mail. Nothing electronic about it. Also, there were fanzines published in the early days of Star Wars fandom, like Hyperspace and Warped Speed. This would be kind of like Reddit before Reddit. There was an official Star Wars newsletter that was published. Being Gen X myself, I remember things like this before the internet. It was so exciting to find a magazine about something you're really into, or in this case, a newsletter. Now, another big source of fandom during that time is kind of regarded as Star Wars competition. Talking about Star Trek. And they had conventions as early as 1972. And some people say even as early as 66. But I think the first official convention was 1972. An official Star Wars convention did not happen until 1999. I mean, think about it. Isn't that crazy? Now, I am sure that there were conventions that were unofficial, but wow, 1999. Relatively speaking, that wasn't all that long ago. Well, I guess it kind of is. I'm getting old. Now, very quickly, Star Wars created a need for other things like Star Wars. And various studios raced to fill this demand. Some were quite deserving of the big screen, like Star Trek, the motion picture, and especially Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. God, I love that movie. But others were quite obviously Star Wars knockoffs. Probably the best example of this was Battle Beyond the Stars. If you haven't watched this movie, I suggest you give it a look. It's one of those Roger Corman movies. And trust me, it is horrible and it is awesome at the same time. Thank you, Matt, for recommending it. Even CBS got in on the action. And in 1978, it really cannibalized the Star Wars brand. Oh yes, we're doing this. We're doing this right now. We are talking about the thing that George Lucas himself so desperately wants to rid the world of, even more than the Jedi want to rid the universe of the Sith. I'm talking the Star Wars Holiday Special. I'm telling you, if you haven't seen it, you have to, like immediately after this video. Please finish my video first, because it truly must be seen to be believed. There was a segment of all Wookiee dialogue, no subtitles. They had Harrison Ford, who at this point had absolutely zero fucks to give. He was so just getting a paycheck or fulfilling a contractual obligation. I'm not sure which, but you could tell. There was a whole list of 70 stars just sprinkled in there for no apparent reason. An elderly Wookiee named Itchy, I think it's Itchy, getting off in a lazy boy using what kind of looks like a VR headset, like a 70s Oculus Rift. They also have B. Arthur. And yes, I'm talking about B. Arthur from the Golden Girls. But back then, she was on a show called Maude. And she was the owner of the Mos Eisley Cantina. And as they close their doors for the night, she sings. Yeah. Of course, you got Jefferson Starship. Starship? Yeah, I think they were at that time. Who knows? They changed their name so often, I couldn't keep up. Okay, I had a weird random thought. They went from Jefferson Airplane to Jefferson Starship, and then eventually Starship. So, what happened to just Airplane? And who was Jefferson? Was Jefferson in the band? Was he like Grace Slick's dad or something? Is Jefferson his first name or last name? That's weird. But I think the best thing is Life Day. Yes, Life Day. Apparently it's canon now, thanks to The Mandalorian. 3PO expresses his wish to be human and not a droid in the most cringe-worthy of speeches. I mean, really, it's bad. And of course, Princess Leia sings at the end. It is so crazy. I mean, like, so crazy. I mean, there is crazy, and there is crazy, but then there is Princess Leia singing to a bunch of Wookiees, wearing Snuggies on Life Day. Yeah, even Carrie Fisher would put that on at the end of a party when she wanted to kick everybody out of the house. And I guess it was pretty effective. Nowadays, I guess you could use that song, work, 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 work. But there is one thing, one good thing that the holiday special did do. And it was the first appearance of everybody's favorite bounty hunter, Boba Fett. As you can see, back then when there was only really 3 channels, I guess, Star Wars fans, especially the kids, would pay attention to anything with Star or Wars, and specifically Star Wars on it. Of course, all this laid the groundwork that would become what we have today, like continued movies with prequels and the sequels, and all the one-offs. Rogue One, still awesome. We have Disney Plus shows like The Mandalorian, the Expanded Universe or Legends, Star Wars comics, video games, and someday, if we're all really, really good and not toxic man babies, we will get a trilogy written and directed by Rian Johnson. Oh boy, no. May that day never come. Also, an unofficial holiday named Life Day. I'm just kidding, it's May the 4th be with you. Not to mention that throughout the years, Star Wars has had a heavy presence at both Comic-Con and D23 and various other conventions. So in conclusion, I want to thank the OG fans for loving this thing so much that an entire culture grew up around it. They didn't know it at the time, but their nerdy love for all things Star Wars would become generational. Parents show their kids the movies that sparked their imagination when they were kids. Other franchises would spring up, like Harry Potter and the film versions of The Lord of the Rings, and I even hate to say it, but Twilight. And oddly enough, Fast and the Furious franchise. There's like 9 of them. Who would have thought that? Even the Marvel Cinematic Universe may not have taken shape as the way we know it if Star Wars hadn't existed. So again, thank you old school Star Wars fans. Next week, we will look at the immediate Star Wars sequels and how they further entered the American zeitgeist. The title of next week's episode is An Empire Strikes Back, but the Jedi will return. Fare thee well, my friends, and take care.